and welcome to The Healing Season, the podcast that is here to help you move from hurting to healing. By the end of this podcast, you hopefully will have learned something new or something more about healing, and we will have helped you focus on one gentle thing that you can do to heal a little more each day, starting with today. Stick around, and week after week, you'll see how it all adds up to a more peaceful and joyful you. The focus of today's podcast, episode 1, that's exciting, isn't it? By the way, welcome, and thank you for joining me for episode 1, making the first move. Ooh, it sounds a little risky, doesn't it? And the truth of the matter is that it is. It is in some ways easier to stay stuck in the hurt than it is to move out of it and toward the healing. I remember when I first lost my mom and dad, and if you don't know my story, part of it includes the fact that they were killed in a tornado in 1999, and you can read all about it. I've got a book called The Healing Season, How a Deadly Tornado Wrecked and Reshaped My Faith, and it's available on Amazon and audiobooks as well, so you can check that out. But when I first made my move from hurting to healing, part of me felt like a traitor. And maybe you know what I'm talking about. The feeling that if you let go of whatever your hurt is, that you're somehow betraying the person, place, or thing. Like for me, I thought if I heal from the loss of my mom or dad, then I'll have nothing whatsoever left to prove that I ever even had a mom or dad. I don't know what your particular tornado is, but I'm sure that there's at least one reason, even if just the healing takes intentional and focused work, that you've stayed stuck up until now. But how great is it that you're here? So let's talk a little bit more about how to get from here to there. If you've ever gone through a traumatic injury, you know that the initial blow can be a pretty dramatic event, but it can also be quite quick, right? Whereas the healing can take a long time. If you've ever known anyone who's broken a bone, you know that that can snap in an instant, but it has to stay set in a cast for a painfully long time to many. I can see those of you who have had one wanting to itch underneath your cast at this moment. But when does the healing begin? Well, that is a question that I actually learned a lot from a dear friend who's a gardener. No, she didn't come to set my bones, and she didn't come to set the bones of my heart straight either. My friend Patricia is an excellent gardener. And when the tornado first came, she said to me, I'm going to come over to your house and plant some flowers. And that way, when you come home, you'll be able to smile. See, sometimes you have to plant in your face in these hard times ways to smile and reasons to smile. And for me, that was something about gardening itself that was intensely therapeutic. The life cycle that we see played out, it doesn't matter what climate you live in, you know how it is. Even gardening inside of your house. Sometimes the plants thrive. Sometimes they almost completely disappear. Sometimes they bear fruit. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes a plant is wounded so much that it needs to be cut all the way back to start all over again. And it is like that with us too, isn't it? And so planting flowers teaches us more than just botany. It teaches us about ourselves. And it teaches us I pose. It teaches us about God and his love for us as well. The healing season, you should know, is a Christian thing because it's a me thing, and I'm a Christian girl. I wouldn't be where I am today if it weren't for Jesus. But I want to let you know this, that you don't have to be a Jesus follower to enjoy this podcast or to glean some things that will be helpful to you as you work toward your healing season. So just be, aware of the fact that sometimes Bible language will show up, and I can't make my way through a day without talking about God. And so if that's cool with you, excellent. So today, It's not just about planting flowers to make ourselves smile, but it's about going a little bit deeper and digging up some of those roots, right? About maybe putting some nutrients into the soil of our hearts and minds that have been going on far too long, unattended. Today, you get to attend to yourself. So for you, what brings you here? What is your tornado? What do you need to heal from? And it doesn't have to be just one thing. For me, my first healing season took place literally about the tornado. But I've done the same healing again and again over various aspects of my life. And I know this, it'll probably always be true because life always throws things at us, doesn't it? But God always gives us a way to heal. The Bible tells us that He's a God of healing and restoration. And so I just want to share that with you today, to know that God isn't done. Here's one fun thing. I heard it said, in the end, it all works out. If it hasn't worked out yet, it just means that it's not the end. But what about you? What's your tornado? What do you need to grasp some peace, some serenity now from? Okay? Can you say it? Do you know it? Maybe there's a big one and maybe there's little ones. Now, no, I'm not a counselor. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a medical doctor. I am a traditional naturopath, but I'm not your traditional naturopath. I'm just here to share with you the many, many ways that you can, starting now, find healing from whatever that tornado is for you. So here's the thing. What's one thing that we can all do? In fact, there's one thing that we all must do in order to truly process the trauma, the grief of a tornado in our lives, a trauma, okay? And I'm not your trauma mama, but I'm certainly your sister in it. We're in this together. So here's the thing. I love so many great books. Like there's a book called Healing Trauma by Peter Levine. And there's another book from Dr. Lehman called Outsmarting Yourself. And they're both very heady books. They're pose the very same concept in how we process trauma. The key to healing and to not getting stuck is connectedness. Connectedness to another human being. Face to face, eyeball to eyeball. The brain can't do it unless we have connectedness. And I have good news. Here's the thing. I'll come back to the excellent good news in this because I can already hear you saying probably the same thing that I thought. Well, what if I don't have connectedness? What if the people in my life have proven themselves unreliable? What if I'm isolated? So I just want to toss out to you, first of all, I hear you and thank you. And and if you have questions, one of the beauties of this podcast format is that you and we can connect with one another. So, I would like to hear some of your feedback on these things. I want to know what you're going through and how you're healing. But the thing is this, God is with us. He's literally Emmanuel, which means God with us. And in the Bible, it tells us that God is our ever-present help in times of trouble. And so in the book, Healing Trauma, he talks about something called the Emmanuel approach, which is if you are not connected to someone, say, for example, you go through an instantaneous event that is traumatizing, okay? And by the way, that doesn't have to be a big thing. Like if your nervous system goes off on a tirade, if somebody cuts you off in traffic, that counts, okay? Here's the thing. God is with you. And so rather than going, I'm alone and I'm just going to go off in this car right now, look for Jesus. Look for Jesus. And if you're near a human, look for a human to connect with in that moment. And if you're that human who's connecting, by the way, you don't have to do anything but be there, okay? We're not the secret solution, but we're part of the key that God uses to help us process this trauma. Connectedness is everything. And that is the way that you make the first move toward healing, starting today. Connectedness. And this is not just in case you're thinking, oh, wow, a couple of guys write books on trauma, and here comes Shannyn telling us that we have to talk to people. Super. Well, you know what? I get you. I'm an introvert myself. I mean, I like to have a couple of close friendships, but like move out of isolation is a risky venture. I totally get that. But I want to present to you the idea that you are needed. And in the areas where we are most hurt, we can also be most helpful. That includes you, okay? You're needed. So, here's the thing. As we make our way through these events in our lives, if we can stay connected, then what we can do is right-size the trauma rather than letting it become so gigantic in our lives. And this is the reason why, certainly the reason why, things like 12-step programs create something like sponsorships or fellow travelers as a part of their model. Because connectedness is how we are made. In fact, not to be overly esoteric, but since we can, it's a podcast after all, think about this. You know how the way you can tell an artist from just their art, their style, you can tell a Picasso from a Dali, right? You can certainly tell a Michelangelo from a Dali any day. Why? Because the artist, you can see their work. So when you consider the fact that God is the artist of you and me, of the galaxies, of every cell, of everything, and there is nothing whatsoever in creation that exists in isolation. We are all part of one great big ecosystem. So we're not meant to be alone. It's a fallacy. I think it's based on fear. And I'm going to go ahead and invite you to just step even the tiniest step away from fear and toward the freedom that is available to you. I know because I am not a super phenomenon. I'm not a phenomenon. I'm just a person. But I have been deeply wounded and deeply healed. And so what the purpose of this podcast is really to share with you weekly one thing that you can do, whether it's, different kinds of therapies that we can dive into, whether it's anything in my wheelhouse. If you know me, we're going to talk about oils. We're going to talk about nutrition. We're going to talk about walking and talking and praying and journaling and all the things. But number one is connection. So here's a challenge to you, okay? So if we're going to heal, it's going to be an inside job, but we're going to reach out to one another. We're going to reach out deep down inside of ourselves, and we're going to reach up to God, okay? We're going to reach out, we're going to reach in, and we're going to reach up to find our healing. Today, I invite you, where are you going to reach out? Is it a text message that you're going to send to a friend? Is it a telephone call that you're going to make? Is it to make an appointment to have tea with someone? Maybe it's time for you to get back to church. You haven't gone maybe since a while, or a club. Maybe you need to go outside of your home and meet other people who have a like interest or a hobby. Maybe you are joining a recovery community. Speaking of, I want to share with you that I myself am a member of a 12-step fellowship. And the very first time that I went to a face-to-face meeting, I was very scared because there's a lot of shame and fear involved with admitting that you are, step one, basically across the board, powerless over fill in the blank, and that your life has become unmanageable. Nobody wants to admit that, right? But the thing is that when I pulled into that parking lot, I turned on my radio and there was a song on called This Is Where the Healing Begins from a band called 10th Avenue North. They're a Christian band. Check them out. And I was just like, you know what? This is the stuff. Moving out of isolation, stepping away from shame, and connecting with other people who also need your help. You know, they say that people have been doing a program for a while are called old timers, and the newcomers are the people who just come in that door going, oh my gosh, what's going on? Okay. Everybody's needed. It's just as helpful to an old timer to see a newcomer come in the room. And it's just amazing for a newcomer to see somebody who's got a whole bunch of recovery under their belt. We're all needed everywhere where we are. So as you reach out, there are some options. As you reach in, here's your next challenge for this week. What is one gentle kindness that you can do for yourself this week? You know, whether it's something as simple as making a cup of tea that you really enjoy, but that you rarely actually brew. Maybe it's taking a walk, which you planned on doing, but just never get around to. You decide. Maybe it's some journaling time, okay? Reaching in to take time to refresh yourself, to catch your breath, okay? And then reaching up. Reaching to God and saying, Lord, how is it between us? And thank you for your healing. And I would love to just invite you to join me even right now as we could connect together to reach up. Let's pray. God, thank you that you heal us. Thank you that you literally say in the Bible, you are the God who heals us. God, thank you that you say to everything there is a season and that there is a time to heal. God, we've been through times of mourning, and we've certainly all as a culture here now seen our more than fair share of sadness. But we want to step away from that time to mourn right now, and we want to lean into your healing. And so we say, God, give us creative ideas for what you would have for us. And we thank you in advance that that includes healing in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so are we good to go? Do you know what job one is? Reach out, connect. This is how we make the first move toward healing. Reach in, check in with yourself. You matter too. And reach up. Reach up to the Most High, because he's there for you. And I am there for you too, by the way. I do have a little bit of room in my schedule for some personal coaching. So if you'd like to work with me as a naturopath, or you'd like an accountability partner along your healing season, reach out with love at my website, thehealingseason.com. You can send me an email there too if you'd like to connect for maybe a speaking event. And there's links there to find all my books. So thank you so much for taking some time. Like and subscribe and do all the things so that we can make sure that this podcast gets out there. The Healing Season isn't meant to be therapy. If you need a counselor, get yourself one. You deserve it. If you need a pastor, get yourself one. You deserve it. But remember, I'm not your pastor or your counselor. I'm your friend, Shannyn Caldwell, who's moving from hurting to healing and is here to help. Catch you next week here on The Healing Season. And if nobody else tells you today, let me be the first. Healing looks great on you.